right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Autonomous IT Live. Today, we've got a really great show lined up for you. We've got three different segments where we'll be talking about spring cleaning in IT. So, our very first segment we will have is Eric Fonseca and Ashlyn Davis. Eric is the Union School District Information Systems Supervisor, and Ashlyn is the Learning and Development Specialist at Automox. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them in and let them introduce themselves. So thank you guys so much for joining. And Ashlyn, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. Excited to be here. I work on the people team at Automox and excited to talk to you and Eric today about how to keep a work-life balance in this crazy world. Eric, hi.
Hey, Ashlyn. Hey everyone, my name is Eric Fonseca. As John said, I am the Systems Information Supervisor here at Union School District. We've been here for about 6 years now, and we are a medium-sized district located in San Jose, California. So excited to speak with everyone today.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. So to get us started, when you hear the term work-life balance, what does that mean to you personally?
It's a great question. Work-life balance to me really means to be present and effective in both my professional and my personal lives, without one consistently draining energy from the other. I think early in my career, I thought balance meant just, I had to leave work at work, home life at home. But since then, I've learned that it's more about managing my energy output for each of the different realms, and also knowing when to say no and when to delegate, when to unplug. When I go home, kind of unplug, just kind of focus on home life and my family. And so over time, I just kind of realized that there's got to be a balance, and I'm still working at that. The balance shifts every now and then, but I think in long term, just to look at sustainability and well-being, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. It is such a practice. I don't think very many people are inherently good at the work-life balance. It takes a lot of intention, but absolutely, and especially like you mentioned, going home to your family and really being able to unplug and be all there, and then probably in the same vein, doing the opposite, like being able to kind of unplug a little bit from family life, and when you're at work, really fully investing your energy there.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, that's awesome. And where have you seen automation or streamlined systems really help reduce stress or save time?
So in our organization, our school district, kind of the key areas I've seen, automation and these streamlined systems save us time is in the ticketing system. Ticketing, and then K through 8 IT, we deal with a high volume of often very low complexity tickets issues, right? Things like password resets, Chromebook issues, things of that nature. So by adding automation and streamlining that process has really saved us time and stress. And then the second piece would probably be around software patching and updates. That's been a big win recently for us. And so just not only does it bring security to our environment, but also eliminates the need of manual intervention and having to touch hundreds of machines, and freeing up my team's time to focus on kind of other projects. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that they're like, we're talking about work-life balance in at a high level, but there's also, I feel like what you're speaking to is this sort of work and time balance at work. So not just because you're at work doesn't mean you necessarily have to spend all your time on these tiny little tasks. Like, how can you automate and like leverage the technology we have today to help you and your team focus on the more strategic or impactful and effective projects, instead of focusing all their time on those kind of low impact tickets that are still valuable because they still build trust, with the people in your school district and in your environment. But at the same time, your people don't necessarily want to be, doing that day in and day out. And so there's so much of a balance to all of those.
Yeah, elements. And that's a great point you bring up, because there are levels to each of this, right? It's like your work and your home life, right? There's different levels of how you prioritize things, and even within that, it's like, okay, I'm at work, but then how do there's subcategory of work, and how do I optimize that? Or at home, like, I have this to do, I have that to do. So that's, it's a great point that you brought up.
Yeah, and I always say, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're
that's so true. Yeah.
If you're spending all your time at work doing all these things that don't bring you any energy, then that gets a lot harder because your cup is emptied all day. And we all have things at work that, like, maybe we don't want to do all the time, but there's just that balance there of where can I bring in things that energize me a little bit more instead of spending all my time doing things that, suck my energy. And that's where, I've even found in my career, though it's less technical, like that automation can be so valuable and kind of removing some of that, that weight, from the remedial tasks. So absolutely. Eric, can you share a more specific example for us of a small automation or workflow improvement that made a noticeable difference for you or your team?
Yeah, I think one specific example would be around account creation and deactivation, just handling user accounts and how that gets created. Prior to us kind of automating this workflow or streamlining this, it was a really manual process that included multiple departments, multiple folks from those departments. So we're at a point now where if a new student gets added or a new staff member gets added, kind of things get triggered, and things happen in the background. Accounts get created, they get added to groups, they get their everything they need to start at Union School District by automated. So that's been a big win for us specifically, and it on the face of it, it doesn't seem that exciting, right? But trust me, the mental load that is lifted from me and our team, and it gave us back so many hours because we no longer have to worry about this student didn't get added, and then there's this whole kind of backtracking of who dropped the ball, and so it's been great for us.
Yeah, I've even seen that from, the other side. I remember when our IT team set up, similar automations, and that's helped so much from a cross-functional perspective, so that myself and my team on kind of the back end admin side can know, like, hey, accounts just get created, they get added to the Slack channels they need to, and maybe we need to troubleshoot and problem solve, but we don't have to spend so much energy up front making sure all the checklist items happen. Like, we've set up automations to know that, that at least the bare minimum is going to happen. And then our IT team is able to focus so much more time and energy on those higher ticket items, like, oh, my computer isn't working the way it's supposed to, or what have you. And that's really valuable. And Eric, what advice would you give to someone new in IT who's trying to set some healthy boundaries early on in their career?
I would start by setting expectations with yourself and your team, right? Just because you can respond at 9:30 p.m. doesn't mean you should. It's something I had to learn quickly. So, model that behavior that you want others to follow. Communicate your availability. Stick to it. Prioritize is a big one too. Prioritize. Learn how to prioritize, and just not every issue is a fire. It's okay to let non-urgent tasks just kind of wait a bit. So yeah, I would say that. And remember, one other thing I want to make sure to say is that remember that your value isn't solely tied to how many hours you work. focus on efficiency and delivering quality work within your designated time. Just focus on that, and you'll be an asset to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And something, you and I have talked a lot about getting to know each other before today is how much your family means to you. And for so many of us, like that's such a core to, wanting to have a work-life balance, is to be able to show up fully on both sides. And so to your point, like it's not necessarily about the amount of hours you have your butt in a seat, but the quality that you're bringing to the table in both elements of your life. Thank you so much, Eric. It was really great to chat with you. And I will pass it back to Landon.
All right, Ashlyn, Eric, thank you guys so much for that segment. A lot of really good insights there. All right, so for our next segment, it's going to be led by yours truly, me, and we're going to talk about some spring cleaning up of tech debt. And with me, I'm bringing in Colby Hall and Henry Smith. So Colby is the manager of IT operations at Automox, and Henry is the application security engineer, one of the application security engineers at Automox. You may have seen both of these people on other podcasts. Henry, quite frequently a regular on the Patch Fix Tuesday podcast. And then Colby is also on an episode of Automox Insiders with Maddie Regis. So if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick also. Henry, we'll start with you.
All right. I'm Henry, security engineer here at Automox, who really just loves digging into all things security. And that's essentially my role here. And I absolutely love it.
All right. Colby?
Yeah, I'm Colby. I'm the manager of IT operations here at Automox, and it's, just going through and overseeing all of the IT operations, and just looking to better manage and make everything more efficient as far as everything that runs through IT here.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for the introductions. I guess I probably should introduce myself too. I'm Landon Miles. I'm a technical content manager here at Automox, and so I explain how things work is what I do a lot of the time. So so let's talk about tech debt. It's one of those things that everybody deals with, but not everyone really knows how to tackle. So Henry, Colby, what are we really talking about when we talk about tech debt?
I'll go first.
Sounds great.
I feel like tech debt can mean different things, depending on the context, of course. But in short, I would describe it as like an accumulation of shortcuts that you've taken, like trading immediate convenience for like long-term like complexity, maintaining things, increased overhead, even increased risk to the business. Like basically, it's like the cost of additional rework caused by choosing like a faster, easy solution instead of something that might be more best practice or more secure and an approach that might take longer initially.
Yeah, I think that's a great
To
definition.
me, tech debt.
I was gonna. Yeah, Colby, go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, no worries.
We're just excited.
Always trying to find that proper spacing. Exactly. Yeah. To me, tech debt typically presents itself in a just loss of efficiency over time. So yes, like Henry said, it's those things to solve those problems early on, just tackle it as soon as you see it and squash it. But when you do that in a certain way, like a one-time fix, you're not really solving a bigger long-term problem. You're just slapping a band-aid on something. And therefore, over time, you start to see your team kind of slow down. These problems really hang up your whole entire team, your whole operation, when you should be implementing more long-term and dynamic strategies to handle these things that pop up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for those insights. Now, when it comes to tech debt, where do you typically see it hiding? And are there certain tools, workflows, or habits that kind of outlive their usefulness other than Windows Server 2008?
You just took the words right out of my mouth. So from, wearing the security hat, I think a lot of tech debt hides, as we know, in like end of life software. That's really a big one, or unsupported legacy systems or infrastructure in general. Maybe your processes, like manual processes that can be automated. I would consider that to be tech debt. Shadow IT is always a fun one. I'm sure Colby knows all about that and can provide insights. Documentation gaps as well. Those are the few that come to my mind immediately.
Yeah. On my side, I would just kind of echo a lot of that. Shadow IT obviously is a big one. You want to make sure everything IT is kind of handled in house. On my side of the fence, we see it in a lot of old kind of API connections where the credentials were forgotten and everyone's kind of scared to update that connection to where, like, is the business going to explode? Probably not, but it's still scary nonetheless. There's a lot of things in your identity provider typically where you have older group mappings or older roles for RBAC assignments, a lot of automated workflows that kind of just falls off the map. Yeah, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but there's definitely a lot out there.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for those insights. So then, Henry, quick question. So from your lens of security, how does old or bloated infrastructure turn into a liability?
Easily. No,
Easily.
but seriously, I mean, we've heard it time and time again, right? There are so many articles, stories, blogs, write-ups out there where the root cause of a major security breach was some end of life or otherwise abandoned piece of infrastructure that had a plethora of known exploitable vulnerabilities, or maybe even like a bad process that led to a misconfiguration, which opened an unexpected hole that let a threat actor in. I think in general, those legacy systems really can sneak up on you when you least expect it. And I mean, just look at cyber insurance, for example. I mean, that's basically a requirement as a business to carry it these days. There's a reason why the questionnaires always want to know, okay, do you have any outdated systems? Do you have proper patching policy in place? Do you have critical security controls like MFA or endpoint detection and response? So even insurance companies know that old infrastructure is a liability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point there. And then, so Colby, from an IT operations perspective, what's the downstream impact on your team or the rest of the company when tech debt builds up unchecked?
I have one word, and it's chaos. Right? But just to kind of expand on that a little bit more. So when tech debt starts to build up unchecked in the company, you start to see it where your team really starts slowing down in response to complex problems. You're really heightening on that Band-Aid break fix mentality instead of something in IT that we call problem management. And that would be where you take a collection of problems and then or issues, and you label it as a problem and you tackle the problem instead of the break fix. There's also just the fact that you start to get to the point where no one can take time off. Things really start to slow down. You eventually end up having, it's really common in a lot of IT departments where you have this one person that's like the person of knowledge, and they share a lot of these just tribal knowledge that the business just can't really operate really well without them kind of in the mix. So then how's that person ever supposed to take time off, take vacation, practice good mental health? There's no way. So there's definitely a lot of effects and a lot of negatives.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of the one person that knows where the Band-Aid is too. It's like they can't take a break, they can't take a vacation. So what does a good cleanup process actually look like, entail? Where do you start when everything feels like chaos? So
Colby, you go first this time.
Yeah, all right. So I feel that a good strategy is to obviously you want to get an idea of your standing right now. So a current snapshot. You essentially want to label out, hey, for my department, for my role, wherever you're at, doesn't matter if you're an individual or a manager. What are my roles and responsibilities and what are my current capabilities? And then kind of give yourself a gut check, just a first reaction of, hey, how do I feel about that? And just assigning color to it. Is it like red where I feel really bad? Is it yellow where there's some competency, but it could be better? Or is it green where something's super solid? There's nothing that you don't know about it. It's a perfectly defined process. And then based off of where you see the green versus the red and the yellow all the way over on the negative side of things, You ignore things that are really well and have really defined processes, and you just start tackling, hey, what's really important? Is it like my onboarding, offboarding process? Is it my role-based assignments off of RBAC? And then you just start tackling it piece by piece.
I feel like Colby and I have a little bit of telepathy going on here because I was kind of thinking of a similar answer. So from my security background, I mean, my default response is start by prioritizing what presents the most actual risk to you or your organization. Like get up on the balcony, take a look at all your different buckets that need to be filled, moved, or emptied. You know, which of these could end our company as we know it? Which of these could harm our reputation the most? Start by triaging those issues. And to echo Colby's point, of course, focus on visibility as well. You can't fix up or clean what you don't know about, just like you can't protect what you don't know you have. So scan your assets, catalog them, document what's deployed out there, centralize it the best way you can. And one little last piece of advice I'd say is to focus on quick wins and celebrate them. Cleaning up tech debt can truly be an arduous and painful process, especially when it's like very deeply rooted. So little victories build up and lead to accomplishing much bigger goals. And it's just much more positive in my experience that way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think that's some really good advice from both of you guys. So Colby, Henry, thank you guys so much for joining us for this live show. Really good conversations here, really good topics. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let's see. So our next segment is going to be Henry, I'm trying to find your hide button.
I'm staying here.
Right, here we are. So our next segment is going to be with Jeremy Maldonado, Ted Harpott, and Spencer Pothier. And they will be talking about site reliability, which is a fun topic. So, all right. I'll pass it over to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Landon. And yes, this is indeed a fun topic. We have a plethora of things to talk about. Our topic today is specifically about spring cleaning. But first, my name is Jeremy. I'm a senior solutions consultant with the professional services team here at Automox. And Spencer and Ted.
Yeah, I'm Spencer Pothier, staff SRE here. Been here about 3 years.
I'm Ted Harp. I'm a site reliability engineer, and I've spent the last few years working to keep the Automox online systems running smoothly and efficiently. It's great to be here.
Thank you both. And I must say, y'all really are subject matter experts when it comes to keeping our organization alive and healthy. And as mentioned, the topic for this is spring cleaning. And we asked both of you guys to kind of contribute some of your ideas. And y'all were nice enough to give us a very detailed list of things we can go over today. And hopefully we can share this later in like a blog post or a follow-up email to this live show. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kind of mediate y'all through this, and y'all can kind of give us more insight onto these, what I'm going to say, these 5 really good bullet points of spring cleaning and topics. And I'll kick it off to y'all since y'all really are the subject matter experts on this. But we're starting off with audit monitoring and alerting. And I'm going to let y'all take that away for a moment.
Okay, I'll take that one. So overall, similarly stated by Henry and Colby in the last segment, the SRE spring cleaning could be summarized as clearing tech debt. It's just the same idea. We have the list of 5 things we're going to cover today. I'll start with the audit monitoring. Basically, over time, alerts can become noisy or irrelevant. We have to ask ourselves, are our alerts still actionable? You don't want people getting call fatigue. Are our monitoring dashboards still relevant? Do they reflect the health of our services accurately? And are there gaps in our monitoring? You know, what are we not monitoring closely enough? We had a rash of alerts for services that would appear offline for just a minute or two, get a page, hurry over to the desk to respond to it, and it would clear up before we could do anything. And over time, we were getting desensitized to that particular alert and how it would self-resolve, which ended up making us respond slower in hopes that it was about to resolve. And the problem is that we would occasionally be real downtime that we'd delay the mitigation efforts as a result. So it's really important to keep your auditing, monitoring, and alerting up to date and accurate.
Very well put. Spencer, do you have anything to elaborate on that?
No, I think Ted covered it pretty well. We just did, kind of a review of all of our dashboards, make sure everything was up to date, still giving us an accurate picture of the health of all of our services and systems, and just making sure everything's up to snuff. So.
And I like the way you put it. You don't want people getting on-call fatigue. I never had a word for that, but I kind of like the way this is put because it's true.
Sure.
And it's true to form. So going to next, refreshing run books and procedures. Keeping steps accurate, easy to follow. Any care to elaborate on that?
Spencer, you want to go over? You want me to take 2 in a row?
Go for it.
All right. So for the run books and the procedures, you got to refresh those often. Look at them and say, are the steps accurate and easy to follow, even under pressure? Like if you're in the middle of a call, you don't want to be trying to read these details and getting just flustered, I guess. And you want to make sure your contact details and the escalation paths are up to date. Have any recent postmortems, generated action items to updates that we need to update the specific run books. When we have newer staff or problems that don't come up very often, people rely heavily on these procedures. And we've all gone to the wiki and found instructions that lead us to obsolete login methods or servers that weren't even online, delaying your response effectiveness. That's it.
Yeah, I think for me, just to echo on that, like cleaning up some of those old run books that are no longer relevant for, services that we've deprecated or decommissioned, and you search for one thing and those pop up, and you're like, this is not particularly useful, and that's not what you want. If you get a call in the middle of the night, it's to go to the wrong documentation. So we've been making a solid effort to clear out some of that old stuff.
Yeah, you can send yourself down a rabbit hole spending 10 minutes trying to log into a system that's not even in use anymore. Once again, slowing your efforts.
Yeah, all that post-mortem stuff is really important. I'm a former Scrum Master, so yeah, there's like a little bit of a joke about like, oh, a Scrum Master wants to call a meeting for everything, and I was like, sometimes that's true, but sometimes we need a meeting. If I have a wiki article that's just sending me into like a loop for too many hours, yeah, we're gonna have a little meeting about this. But that said, so thank you both. Going on next to cleaning up configuration and infrastructure. I like this one a lot because you gave it a nice, neat little subtitle. It says reduce cruft, which I'm all in favor of. But kicking us off with that.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time cleaning up some old infrastructure and going through, various vendor configurations and such. Good example of that. This last quarter, we dropped our Datadog bill about 20% just by, going through and making sure all of our logs and stuff are useful. We brought that tool in several years ago to help with our monitoring solutions. And it's a great tool, but if you keep adding stuff to it, they'll keep charging you more. So it was about time to go through with a fine-tooth comb, and we were able to make a pretty significant cost savings there. And nobody hates saving money, so.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much to add to that. I mean, we have to keep on that because there's always new logs being shuffled over there and driving up the cost monthly. So that's even more than an annual thing. So you don't go from 10,000 to 100,000 and over the year when you weren't paying attention. I know Spencer probably 18 months ago spent a great deal of time cleaning up old virtual machines and just resources all over in the cloud that we were running. And I hesitate to say the number, but I believe it was the millions of dollars that were being cut out of our expenses.
Yeah, it was a pretty large amount, and it was just, stuff builds up over time, kind of like our last segment talking about tech debt. It's not any malicious thing. It's just companies change over time, people come and go, services come and go, and sometimes the cleanup process just didn't happen for them, and stuff gets left running, and everybody's like, oh, I don't know if I should touch that. Is that super important?
Right.
A big part of that effort was not so much the deleting of the resources. It was making really sure that they weren't actually in use. So like trying to find anybody that was still here that was relevant to those services, or talking to just all the right people to make sure you weren't going to shut down the business by unplugging one really important server.
Yeah, there's a lot of investigative work that probably has to go into that. You don't want to just find out the hard way that you cut off a big application or something that clients are making use of.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I'm sure everyone would be excited to save $1 million. So that's important too.
Yeah.
You got to keep all of it.
Yeah. Well, going next, something very important to what we all do, reviewing opportunities to review toil and automation, or automation opportunities specifically, trying to limit repetitive work. I'm sure y'all have a ton on that, but anyone want to take that away?
Sure, I can. It's exactly what SRE almost exists for. It's to aim to eliminate toil and repetitive tasks. So you always just need to go and look around and say, what are the manual tasks that took up a huge amount of our times during deployments or incidents, and can they be automated? We're always on the lookout for reoccurring processes, most often to automate them. I mean, I guess that's what I pretty much already just said, but yeah, you're just that's what our role is. The whole job of SRE, run the infrastructure and make things more efficient. No, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, we're pretty heavy users of infrastructure as code here. That's one of the things that both helps prevent the buildup of unused resources, and it helps to ensure consistency between our environments. So part of that whole process is setting up all the automation to do all the deployments of that infrastructure and just kind of keep everything in sync.
Okay, very well put.
Yeah.
Going off into, this is the last of our list that hopefully we're sending out shortly after this live show. And something that I don't have experience with, because I don't have any prior experience with SRE specifically. But with that being said, trying to validate your service level objectives. Even I myself don't have a clear idea of what that means. So if you could explain that to me as well. And also, what did you kind of mean by what exactly are you hoping to validate at the end of this?
Yeah, so SLOs are obviously service level objectives. It kind of comes from the SRE book that Google wrote. It's just a measure of a particular amount of service, and that can be defined as like response time or an amount of uptime or amount of throughput. There's a couple different golden signals, they call them, that you can keep track of to see if you're meeting those objectives. And then you want to set those on a per service basis for what makes sense. Like very familiar with like the number of nines that a service has?
I think so.
Yeah, so like it comes from like 99.9% uptime gives you this amount of downtime per year. There's calculators out there, but basically each additional 9 you add costs a significant amount to achieve that reliability. So part of the validating is making sure, does this SLO make sense for a particular service? Can we up it? Can we lower it? What's it going to cost? What's the impact going to be for our customers? So hopefully that made some amount of sense.
Good. I did it. Thank you.
Agree with that. I would just say you need to work with the other departments to determine what the acceptable SLO is for your product. Work on a path of improvement so we can meet them if we haven't already.
Okay. Well, thank you. But that was a good learning experience for me. And I'm really excited for this to kind of be shared, because both of you put a lot of effort into kind of explaining these points and elaborating on them here today. So I'm glad for this to be shared. But Spencer, Ted, anything else that y'all wanted to add before we go ahead and close on out?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Landon, I'm going to kick it back to you.
All right, Spencer, Jeremy, Ted, thank you guys so much for your time. So that is actually going to get us to the end of the live show. Jeremy, I found your button. So, all right, that's going to get us to the end of the live show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be posting this on our podcast feed, on our YouTube channel. You'll see shorts from it on LinkedIn and everywhere. So give us a subscription, like, subscribe. Anything you do helps there. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and we will see you next time.